What was Reverend Moon's role in ending world communism?
Reverend Moon was considered by communists to be one of their arch enemies for many years. He published books, or he commissioned people to write books exposing not just the evils of communism in practice, but the flaws in communist theory. He realized, democracy, everything's got its problems. Communism is, of course, is the worst, but really the argument against communism is the philosophical mistakes, the serious mistakes of Marxist economics and political views and interpretation of history, interpretation of reality. That's where he attacked, or that's where he pinpointed. And his position was not destroy communism, but go beyond communism, because he gave them credit where credit was due, that they, in many ways, were more effective than Christianity at addressing the ills of this world. So he didn't just say, let's destroy communism. Let's address their position. Let's connect to their ideals. Communists did have ideals of world peace and so forth. Let's acknowledge that, but let's go beyond that, go over to a next step in history. So he convened conferences, many meetings, rallies on the ground in college campuses in Japan especially, also in Korea and in America and in Europe. A lot of head-on confrontation with communist youth groups. So on the college campuses, Unification young people proved to be the most effective at neutralizing the communist youth groups, because they would challenge them to debates, and they could defeat them in debates. And the key point, the most important point in the ideological struggle, was the issue of atheism. The communism denies God, denies the spiritual foundation of human existence, and is totally materialistic. This was really the core of Father Moon's rejection of communism, was that it's a God-denying theology. And he said, in history, any regime that is against God always fails. So he gave an amazing prophecy in 1971, I believe it was, or 72, in a recorded speech in France, that communism would start to decline in 1977, and then by 1987 it would basically be dead. And this was borne out by history. In 1984, he convened a conference among the Professors World Peace Academy. He asked them to do a conference on the end of communism. And the leaders of that organization objected. They said, the end of communism, it's not going to end in our lifetimes. It's here to stay. But he said, no, I want you to do that conference, to invite speakers who will talk about the end of communism, because it's not going to last much longer. And all of those professors who objected had to eat their words, because within a few years the Berlin Wall had crumbled. Now, Reverend Moon invested incredibly, because there was such a mentality in America that communism was this formidable, irresistible force that was probably going to take over the whole world, or at least be around for a long time as a so-called superpower. And in the Washington Times that Reverend Moon founded, he supported truthful, objective journalism about communism, about the atrocities, about the gulags, and this led to policy shifts in the White House, especially under Reagan. He strongly supported the strategy of the SDI, of the missile shield, that eventually convinced the Russian leadership that all of their nuclear weapons were not going to be effective. He sent reporters. One of his very deft strategies was to send reporters into do fact-finding tours in the Soviet Union, get media people in there to meet media people in Russia, and see firsthand what was going on in that country.
What would have happened to Christianity and, in fact, all of the faiths of the world had the communists succeeded in their goal to dominate the entire world?
Communism is a satanic spirit that wants to destroy religion, and that was their practice. And at best, you'd have state churches, controlled by the party, as a step toward totally destroying religious life, which is impossible.
And what happened?
So what happened
to Christians in countries that became communist?
Well, they were all driven underground or driven into prisons if they wouldn't recant their faith, as far as I understand. Or Christians or people of any faith. So Father Moon believes religion is really the most important facet of human society, spiritual life, religion. So he didn't, hate communists. He didn't hate Russian people at all. It's just that their ideology was false. They were suffering under a false ideology. But we were building relationships with friends in Russia. And on that foundation, in 1990, he convened a World Media Conference in Moscow and was able to personally meet Mikhail Gorbachev. The Moons became friends with the Gorbachevs. Actually, Raisa Gorbachev, a few years later, came to Korea and was, part of some conferencing and cultural activities there. I think they just hit it off well, just on a personal level. And that's really, really important. So as soon as the wall came down with perestroika and glasnost, Reverend Moon was guiding Gorbachev, first of all, to liberalize, to allow all religions, to bring God back into Russia, and to allow religious life to flourish. That's the main foundation. And to educate your young people. So actually thousands and thousands of young Russians were educated in divine principle and Christianity, the Bible, and the ideals of true families, and which has a great positive effect. And they were brought to America, and they toured Washington and New York at the expense of Reverend Moon and this movement. They went to the United Nations. They went to the Congress. They saw what America was really like. No strings attached. Went back to Russia. And those people are building what hopefully will become a successful democratic regime sooner or later within Russia.